The divorce papers hit the marble courthouse steps with a satisfying thud as Vesper Thane stared at her husband's retreating figure, finally understanding that some games end with consequences she never saw coming. "Come on, Jonas. It's 2024. You can't seriously be threatened by me sleeping in the same bed as Riley." Vesper Thane crossed her arms, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she believed she was being progressive and enlightened. The afternoon sun streamed through their apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors where their 7-year-old daughter Mara sat coloring, pretending not to listen. Jonas Thane looked up from his laptop, his accountant's mind already calculating the implications of what his wife was suggesting. At 36, he'd learned to recognize when Vesper was testing boundaries, but this felt different, more public, more deliberate. "It's not about being threatened, Vesper. It's about respect, for our marriage, for our family." He gestured subtly toward Mara, who had stopped coloring entirely now. "Oh, please." Vesper rolled her eyes dramatically, pulling out her phone to check the notifications that had been pinging constantly since she'd posted about her modern love experiment on social media. "Riley and I have been best friends since college. We've shared beds before, when we were drunk at parties. This is no different." "Except you're married now," Jonas said quietly, closing his laptop with deliberate care. "And you're planning to document it online for strangers to validate." Vesper's phone buzzed again. Another comment cheering her on for being brave enough to challenge toxic masculinity. The dopamine hit was intoxicating. "Look, if you trusted me, really trusted me, this wouldn't be an issue." Riley suggested it as a way to prove that men and women can be platonic friends. "It's actually really beautiful when you think about it." From the kitchen, Jonas could hear his mother, Elaine's, sharp intake of breath. She'd been visiting for the week, helping with Mara while Jonas worked late on the quarterly reports. Elaine Thane had never particularly warmed to her daughter-in-law, but she'd kept her opinions mostly to herself for the sake of family harmony. "Mummy, why is Daddy's face red?" Mara's small voice cut through the tension like a knife. Vesper knelt down beside her daughter, smoothing her dark hair. "Daddy's just being silly, sweetheart. He's worried about something that isn't scary at all." Jonas felt something cold settle in his chest. The way Vesper dismissed his concerns in front of their daughter, the casual manipulation disguised as reassurance. When had she become so comfortable with gaslighting? His phone buzzed, a text from Riley. "Dude, your wife is amazing. Most guys would be way too insecure for this. Respect." The presumption in that message, the casual dismissal of his feelings, the way Riley inserted himself into their marriage dynamics. Jonas screenshot the message without really knowing why. Some instinct told him to keep records. "So it's decided then?" Vesper stood up, her hand already reaching for her car keys. "I'm going to Riley's tonight. We'll take a cute photo to show everyone that love is about trust, not possession." "Vesper, please. Can we talk about this privately?" Jonas glanced meaningfully at Mara, who was now openly staring at them. "There's nothing private about it. That's the whole point." Vesper's voice had taken on that brittle quality it got when she felt challenged. "I'm not sneaking around. I'm being completely transparent. If you can't handle your wife having male friends, maybe you need to examine your own insecurities." Elaine finally spoke from the kitchen doorway. "In my day, married women didn't sleep in other men's beds for internet attention." "Well, it's not your day anymore, is it, Elaine?" Vesper's smile was sharp. "Maybe that's why your generation had such a high divorce rate, all that repression and jealousy." The silence that followed was deafening. Jonas watched his mother's face go pale, saw his daughter's eyes fill with confusion and hurt. Something shifted inside him, like a lock clicking into place. "Go ahead then," he said quietly. "Do what you need to do." Vesper blinked, clearly having expected more of a fight. "Really? Really?" Jonas reopened his laptop, his fingers already moving toward his work files. He had a lot of organizing to do suddenly. "I'll be here with Mara." An hour later, Vesper was at Riley's loft across town, setting up her phone to capture the perfect shot. Riley Quinn had always been charming in that effortless way that made people want to be around him. At 33, he'd never been married, never had kids, never had to consider anyone's feelings but his own. "This is going to break the internet," he said, adjusting the lighting. "You're like revolutionizing marriage." Vesper felt a thrill of validation. This was what partnership looked like in the modern age. Trust, freedom, the confidence to love without possessiveness. She posted the photo at 11:47 p.m., a carefully composed shot of her and Riley lying in his bed, both fully clothed, her head on his shoulder, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Besties for life. When your husband trusts you enough to let love be bigger than fear." This is what healthy relationships look like. Modern love. Trust not possession. 10 best friends. Within an hour, it had 300 likes and dozens of comments. Goals. Your husband is so secure. This is beautiful. Relationship goals for real. Back at the apartment, Jonas sat in his home office, methodically creating folders on his computer. Screenshots, bank statements, a timeline document. He wasn't sure why yet, but his accountant's brain understood the value of good records. His phone buzzed with notifications as Vesper's post gained traction. He turned the sound off and kept working. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. In her bedroom, Mara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She didn't understand why Mommy was sleeping at Uncle Riley's house, or why Daddy had that sad look he got sometimes when he thought no one was watching. She pulled her stuffed rabbit closer and tried not to think about how quiet the house felt. At Riley's loft, Vesper lay in the dark, scrolling through the endless stream of validation on her phone. She'd done it. She'd proven that marriage could evolve, that love didn't have to be small and fearful and possessive. So why did she feel so empty? The notification count on Vesper's phone had climbed to over 2,000 by morning. Her trust experiment post was being shared across platforms, sparking debates about modern relationships, toxic masculinity, and the evolution of marriage. She felt electric with the attention, vindicated in a way she hadn't experienced since college, when her feminist theory papers had impressed her professors. "Look at this," she said to Riley over coffee, scrolling through comments. "Listen to this one. Finally, a woman brave enough to show what real trust looks like. Your husband is lucky to have someone so evolved." Riley grinned, pouring himself another cup. "I told you this would be huge. You're basically a relationship influencer now." At home, Jonas was making breakfast for Mara, while his mother sat at the kitchen table, her mouth set in a grim line. The local morning show was discussing Vesper's post, with relationship experts debating whether her trust experiment was progressive or destructive. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" Mara pushed her eggs around her plate, not really eating. "Soon, sweetheart." Jonas muted the television, not wanting his daughter to hear strangers discussing their family. "She's just visiting Uncle Riley." Why do people on TV know about Mommy and Uncle Riley? The innocent question hit Jonas like a physical blow. His wife had made their private life public entertainment, and now their 7-year-old was asking questions no child should have to ask. Elaine reached over and squeezed Mara's hand. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that are hard to understand, honey. But you don't need to worry about it." Jonas's phone buzzed. A text from his brother Noah. "Saw the news coverage. You okay?" News coverage. Their marriage was now news. Another text, this one from his boss. "Take the day if you need it. HR wants to discuss how to handle any media inquiries." Media inquiries about his wife sleeping in another man's bed. Jonas felt something fundamental break inside him. When Vesper finally came home around noon, she was glowing with excitement. "Jonas, you won't believe how much support we're getting." I've had 3 podcasts reach out for interviews. Someone from a morning show wants to talk to both of us about redefining marriage expectations. Jonas was sitting at his desk, surrounded by papers, bank statements, insurance documents, tax records, the methodical organization that had always calmed him. We? He didn't look up from the document he was reviewing. Well, yeah, this affects both of us. You're part of the story now. Vesper sat on the edge of his desk, knocking over his carefully arranged stack of receipts. The husband secure enough to let his wife have male friendships. You're like the hero of this narrative. I didn't agree to be part of any narrative. Come on, don't be like this. Vesper's voice took on that cajoling tone she used when she wanted something. This could be really good for us. I'm thinking about starting a blog about modern marriage. Maybe we could do couples counseling sessions online, show people how trust really works. Jonas finally looked up at her, really looked at her. When had her eyes become so calculating? When had her smile started looking like a performance? Vesper, our daughter asked me why strangers on television are talking about her mother sleeping in another man's bed. The glow faded from Vesper's face, but only for a moment. She'll understand when she's older. We're modeling healthy relationship dynamics for her, showing her that marriage doesn't have to be possessive and controlling. We're showing her that her parents' private life is entertainment for strangers. God, you're being so dramatic. Vesper stood up, pacing to the window. This is exactly the kind of toxic masculinity I'm trying to challenge. You're making this about you instead of celebrating what we accomplished. What we accomplished? Yes, we. We proved that trust is possible, that love can be bigger than fear. She turned back to him, her eyes bright with fervor. Do you know how many women have messaged me, saying they wish their husbands were as evolved as you? Jonas saved the document he was working on. A timeline, starting with yesterday's events. He wasn't sure why he was documenting everything, but his instincts told him to keep records. I need to pick up Mara from school, he said, standing up. I'll come with you. No. The word came out sharper than he intended. I think it's better if I go alone today. Vesper's face flushed. Are you punishing me? Because I chose to trust my friendship over your insecurities. I'm protecting our daughter from having to answer questions about why her mother is internet famous for sleeping in another man's bed. It wasn't like that, and you know it. Jonas paused at the door. What was it like, Vesper? The question hung in the air between them. For a moment, Vesper looked uncertain, like she was trying to remember what it had actually been like. Lying in Riley's bed, taking photos for strangers, performing intimacy that wasn't quite intimacy, but wasn't quite innocence either. It was beautiful, she said finally. It was trust made visible. Jonas nodded slowly. I'll be back with Mara in an hour. After he left, Vesper sat in his chair, looking at the papers scattered across his desk. Financial documents, printed emails, a notebook with dates and times written in his careful handwriting. She laughed, but it sounded hollow in the empty room. He was being so petty, so small, making spreadsheets about their relationship like it was a business transaction. Her phone buzzed. Riley. How's the husband handling his 15 minutes of fame? She typed back quickly. He's being weird about it, making it into a bigger deal than it is. Want to grab dinner? We could plan your next post. Maybe something about how real partnership means supporting each other's growth. Vesper hesitated. Jonas would be back soon with Mara. They should probably have dinner as a family, try to return to normal. But normal felt so small now, so limiting. Sure, she typed. Meet you at 7. When Jonas returned with Mara, he found a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to dinner with Riley to plan the blog. Leftovers in the fridge. Back later. V. Mara read the note over his shoulder. Is Mommy sleeping at Uncle Riley's house again? Jonas crumpled the note and threw it away. No, sweetheart. She's just having dinner. But as he heated up leftover pasta for his daughter, he found himself wondering if that was true. And more disturbing, he found himself wondering if it mattered any more. His phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had tagged him in a response to Vesper's post. This guy is either the most secure husband ever or the biggest doormat. Hard to tell which. Jonas turned off his phone and focused on his daughter's chatter about her school day. But in the back of his mind, he was already planning tomorrow's documentation. Bank account passwords needed changing. Important documents needed securing, just in case. By the end of the week, Vesper's original post had been shared over 10,000 times. She'd gained 3,000 new followers across her social media platforms and had been invited to appear on 2 podcasts and a local morning show. The attention was intoxicating, but it came with a price she hadn't anticipated. Jonas had become a ghost in his own home. He left early for work, came home late, and spent most of his time in the guest room with his laptop and stacks of papers. When Vesper tried to talk to him about the opportunities her viral moment was creating, he responded with polite, distant acknowledgements that felt worse than anger. "You're being passive-aggressive," she told him on Friday night, standing in the doorway of what had become his makeshift office. "If you have something to say, just say it." Jonas looked up from his computer screen, where he was updating a spreadsheet tracking their joint expenses. "I'm not being passive-aggressive. I'm being quiet." "Same thing." "No, it's not." He turned back to his screen. "Passive-aggressive would be if I posted about my feelings online for strangers to validate." The barb hit its mark. Vesper felt her cheeks flush. "That's not what I did." "Isn't it?" She wanted to argue, but something in his tone stopped her. Jonas had never been sarcastic before. His quiet dignity had been one of the things that attracted her to him initially. The way he never needed to prove himself or perform for others. Now that same dignity felt like a wall she couldn't scale. "The morning show wants both of us," she said instead. "It would be good for your accounting firm. Show that you're progressive, modern." "My accounting firm doesn't need me to be progressive. It needs me to be accurate." "Everything isn't about spreadsheets, Jonas." He saved his work and closed the laptop. "No, some things are about respect. Some things are about boundaries. Some things are about considering how your choices affect the people who love you." "I did consider." "You considered how it would look online. You considered how many likes you'd get. You considered how progressive it would make you seem." Jonas stood up, and for the first time in their 8-year marriage, Vesper felt small under his gaze. "You didn't consider how it would feel for your husband to find out from a notification that his wife was in another man's bed." "You knew where I was going." "I knew you were going to Riley's. I didn't know you were planning to perform intimacy for internet points." The word intimacy hung between them like an accusation. Because that's what it had been, wasn't it? Not sex, not cheating in the traditional sense, but a kind of emotional exhibitionism that felt more violating than a simple affair might have. "It wasn't intimate," Vesper said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then what was it?" She didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound hollow. Jonas picked up his laptop and headed for the door. "I'm sleeping in the guest room again tonight." "For how long?" He paused. "I don't know yet." After he left, Vesper sat alone in what used to be their shared office space, surrounded by the evidence of Jonas's methodical documentation. She picked up one of his notebooks and flipped through pages of dates, times, expenses, and observations written in his careful handwriting. Day 1, V posted photo from R's apartment at 11:47 p.m., 8:47 likes by morning. Day 3, Mara asked why strangers on TV know about Mommy, explained as best I could. Day 5, V had dinner with R to plan blog, returned 11:30 p.m., smell of wine and cologne. The clinical precision of his notes made her feel like a specimen being studied, but what disturbed her more was how accurate they were. She had been planning a blog. She had come home smelling like wine. She had been treating their marriage like content to be monetized. Her phone buzzed. A message from Riley. "Saw the morning show segment about modern relationships. You were amazing. Coffee tomorrow to plan the next phase." Next phase, like their friendship was a campaign to be managed. She was about to respond when she heard Mara's voice from the hallway. "Daddy, why do you sleep in the small room now?" "Just for a little while, sweetheart." "Because Mummy made you sad?" The silence that followed felt endless. Vesper held her breath, waiting for Jonas's response. "Sometimes grown-ups need space to think," he said finally. "Are you thinking about divorce? Katie's parents got divorced and now she has 2 houses." Vesper's blood went cold. Divorce. The word hadn't been spoken between them, but it hung in the air now, like a possibility that couldn't be taken back. "I'm just thinking, Mara. That's all." But Vesper could hear something in his voice that terrified her. Not anger, not hurt, not even sadness. Resignation. The sound of someone who had already started making decisions. She put Riley's message away without responding and went to find her family. Jonas was tucking Mara into bed, reading her favorite story about a rabbit who learned to be brave. Vesper stood in the doorway, watching them, feeling like an outsider in her own life. When Jonas finished the story and kissed Mara goodnight, he nodded politely to Vesper and headed back to the guest room. "Jonas, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Can we talk? Really talk?" "About what?" "About us. About fixing this." Now he did turn around, and the expression on his face broke something inside her. "Do you want to fix this, Vesper? Or do you want to perform fixing this?" The question cut deeper than any accusation could have, because she wasn't sure she knew the difference anymore. "I want to fix this," she said, and for the first time in weeks, she meant it completely. Jonas studied her face for a long moment. "Okay. We can talk, but not tonight. Tonight I need to finish organizing some things." "What things?" "Just things that need organizing." He disappeared into the guest room, leaving Vesper alone in the hallway. Through the thin wall, she could hear the quiet tap of keyboard keys and the whisper of papers being shuffled into neat piles. The sound of her husband preparing for something she wasn't ready to face. The morning show appearance didn't go as planned. Vesper had expected supportive questions about modern relationships and progressive marriage dynamics. Instead, she found herself across from a host who seemed more interested in the drama than the philosophy. "So, Vesper, your husband Jonas declined to join us today. How does he really feel about your trust experiment?" Sitting under the bright studio lights, Vesper felt exposed in a way she hadn't anticipated. "Jonas is very supportive. He's just private. Not everyone needs to perform their relationship for public consumption." The irony of her words wasn't lost on the host. "But isn't that exactly what you're doing? Performing your relationship?" "I'm sharing our journey toward a more evolved form of partnership." "And how is that journey going? Are you and Riley planning more sleepovers?" The question was asked with a smirk that made Vesper's stomach turn. Suddenly, she could see herself through the audience's eyes, a woman who had turned her marriage into a spectacle for attention. "Riley and I are friends. Our friendship isn't about sleepovers, it's about proving that trust can overcome jealousy." "But your husband seems to have overcome more than jealousy. He seems to have overcome interest in defending his marriage publicly. That's either very secure or very defeated." Vesper left the studio feeling humiliated instead of vindicated. The segment would air that afternoon, and she already knew how it would look. Desperate, attention-seeking, delusional. At home, she found Jonas in the kitchen making lunch for Mara. He looked up when she entered, but didn't ask how the interview went. "It was harder than I expected," she said anyway. "I imagine it would be. They made it seem like I was just seeking attention." Jonas paused in spreading peanut butter on bread. "Were you?" The question was asked without malice, but it landed like a slap. "I was trying to make a point about trust and modern relationships. By sleeping in another man's bed and posting photos for strangers to judge. It wasn't like that." "What was it like, Vesper?" Jonas finished making the sandwich and wrapped it carefully. "Because I've been trying to understand for 2 weeks, and I still can't figure out what you were actually trying to accomplish." Vesper sat down heavily at the kitchen table. I wanted to prove that our marriage was strong enough to handle unconventional expressions of friendship. Whose idea was the photo? The question caught her off guard. What? The photo, the caption, the whole social media campaign. Whose idea was it? Vesper felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was mutual. Riley and I both thought it would be interesting to document. Riley suggested it. It wasn't a question. Jonas packed Mara's lunch into her school bag with methodical precision. He thought it would be a good way to challenge social norms. And you thought it would be a good way to get attention. That's not... Vesper started to protest, then stopped. Because wasn't it true? Hadn't she felt a thrill at the thought of all those likes, all those comments calling her brave and progressive? I'm taking Mara to my mother's after school, Jonas said. She'll stay there this weekend. Why? Because I think it's better if she's not here while we figure things out. Figure what out? Jonas looked at her directly for the first time in days. Whether we still have a marriage worth saving. The words hit her like cold water. Of course we do. Jonas, it was just a stupid social media post. It got out of hand, but that doesn't mean... It wasn't just a post, Vesper. It was a choice, a series of choices. And every time I've tried to talk to you about how those choices affected me, you've dismissed my feelings as insecurity or jealousy or toxic masculinity. Because that's what it is. No, Jonas said quietly. It's what you need it to be so you don't have to take responsibility for hurting me. The accusation hung between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Vesper felt tears prick her eyes, but they felt performative even to her. When had she lost the ability to feel genuine emotion without wondering how it looked? I never meant to hurt you. I know, but you did. And when I told you that you were hurting me, you told me I was wrong to feel hurt. Jonas picked up his keys and Mara's backpack. I'll be back Sunday evening. Maybe we can talk then, really talk, without cameras or audiences or social media strategies. After he left, Vesper sat alone in the quiet house, scrolling through the responses to her morning show appearance. The comments were brutal. Desperate housewife seeking attention. This woman destroyed her marriage for Instagram likes. Poor husband, hope he gets a good lawyer. Her phone rang. Riley. Saw the interview, he said without preamble. That host was a total bitch. You handled it well. Did I? Because I feel like I just made everything worse. You're overthinking it. So what if Jonas is being dramatic? You proved your point. Marriage doesn't have to be possessive and controlling. Something in Riley's casual dismissal of Jonas's pain made Vesper feel sick. Maybe I should have handled it differently. How? By letting your husband's insecurities dictate your friendships. Come on, Vesper. You're better than that. But as she hung up the phone, Vesper wondered if she actually was better than that, or if she'd just convinced herself she was to justify choices that were really about her own need for validation and attention. The house felt enormous and empty without Jonas and Mara. She wandered from room to room, seeing evidence of Jonas's quiet retreat from their shared life. His clothes gradually migrating to the guest room. His books and papers organized into neat stacks that looked suspiciously like preparation for something permanent. In his makeshift office, she found a folder labeled Consultation Notes and another marked Documentation. Her hands shook as she opened the first one. Legal advice about divorce proceedings, information about custody arrangements, a timeline of events starting with her first post about sleeping at Riley's. He wasn't just organizing papers, he was building a case. The realization hit her like a physical blow. While she'd been basking in social media validation and planning her next blog post, Jonas had been quietly preparing to leave her. She grabbed her phone and called him. "We need to talk," she said when he answered. "I told you, Sunday evening." "No, now, this can't wait." "Vesper, I'm with Mara at my mother's. Whatever this is about can wait 2 days. I found your legal consultation notes." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. "We'll talk Sunday," he said finally, and the line went dead. Vesper stared at her phone, finally understanding that her modern love experiment had modern consequences she'd never considered. While she'd been performing progressive marriage for strangers online, she'd lost sight of the actual marriage she was supposed to be protecting. And now it might be too late to get it back. Sunday evening arrived with the weight of an ultimatum. Vesper had spent the weekend alternating between panic and defiance, rehearsing speeches that ranged from heartfelt apologies to indignant justifications. She'd cleaned the house obsessively, cooked Jonas's favorite dinner, and even taken down the viral post that had started everything. When Jonas returned home alone, Mara was staying another night at Elaine's. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "We need to talk," Vesper said before he'd even set down his keys. "Yes, we do." Jonas sat down at the kitchen table, his posture formal and distant. "But first, I need you to understand something. This conversation isn't about negotiating or compromising or finding a middle ground. This is about you deciding whether you want to save our marriage or continue performing it." The distinction cut deep because it was accurate. "I want to save it." "Do you? Or do you want to save the idea of it? The version that looks good online?" Vesper felt tears start, real ones this time. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But it was never about not loving you or not valuing our marriage." Then what was it about? The question she'd been avoiding for weeks. "I don't know," she said finally. "The attention, maybe. Feeling like I was part of something bigger than just this." She gestured around their quiet kitchen, their ordinary life. "Just this," Jonas repeated. "Our marriage, our family, our daughter, just this." The way he said it made her realize how small she'd made their life sound, how she'd diminished everything they'd built together in pursuit of validation from strangers. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? Because for the past 3 weeks, you've treated our marriage like it wasn't enough, like it needed to be performed and validated and turned into content for other people's entertainment." Jonas pulled out his phone and showed her a screenshot. "Do you know what this is?" It was a message thread between her and Riley from the night she'd slept over. Messages she'd forgotten about, casual and flirtatious in a way that made her stomach turn to read now. "Riley, your husband's a lucky man. If you were mine, I'd never let you out of my sight. You, good thing I'm not yours then. I like my freedom. Riley, freedom looks good on you. Sweet dreams, beautiful. You, sweet dreams. Thanks for helping me prove a point." Vesper stared at the messages, seeing them through Jonas's eyes for the first time. The casual intimacy, the dismissal of their marriage, the way she'd turned their relationship into a point to be proven. "Where did you get these?" "You left your laptop open. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the insurance information, and I saw the messages." Jonas put his phone away. "But that's not the point. The point is that while you were telling me this was about trust and modern relationships, you were having conversations with Riley that you knew would hurt me if I saw them. Those messages don't mean anything. They mean everything, Vesper. They mean that you were getting emotional validation from another man while publicly humiliating your husband. They mean that your trust experiment was really just an excuse to cross boundaries you knew were wrong." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Because he was right, wasn't he? She had known the messages were inappropriate. She had known the whole situation was wrong. But the attention had been so intoxicating, the feeling of being desired and admired so addictive, that she'd convinced herself it was about principles instead of selfishness. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it completely. "I'm so sorry, Jonas. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through it. Can we? Because every time I've tried to tell you how your choices affected me, you've told me I was wrong to feel affected. You've gaslit me into thinking my hurt was really just insecurity." "I didn't mean to." "You did mean to, because it was easier than admitting you'd made choices that prioritized your ego over our marriage." Jonas stood up and walked to the counter, where he'd left a thick manila envelope. "I've been documenting everything for 3 weeks. The posts, the messages, the interviews, the nights you came home late smelling like wine and cologne. The way you dismissed our daughter's questions and made our private life into public entertainment." Vesper's blood went cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've consulted with a lawyer. I'm saying that I've opened my own bank account and moved half our assets into it. I'm saying that I've been preparing for the possibility that this marriage can't be saved." "You're threatening to divorce me?" "I'm not threatening anything. I'm telling you that I've reached the point where I need to protect myself and our daughter from the consequences of your choices." The words hit her like physical blows. "Jonas, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. I'll delete all my social media. I'll stop talking to Riley. I'll do whatever it takes." "Will you? Or will you do it until the attention dies down and then find another way to make our marriage into performance art?" The question revealed how completely she'd destroyed his trust. And the worst part was, she wasn't sure she could honestly answer it. Would she really give up the validation, the attention, the feeling of being special and progressive and admired? "I would do it for you. For us." Jonas studied her face for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, I would have believed that. But 3 weeks ago, I also believed that my wife wouldn't humiliate me publicly for internet likes. He picked up the manila envelope and set it on the table between them. "These are divorce papers. I haven't filed them yet, but they're ready." Vesper stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You turned our marriage into a joke, Vesper. You made me into a punchline. You taught our daughter that love means performing for strangers instead of protecting the people who matter most." "I never meant." "You meant exactly what you did. You meant to get attention and validation, and you didn't care what it cost our family." Jonas sat back down, his voice gentler but no less firm. "I love you. I've loved you for 8 years, but I won't be married to someone who treats our relationship like content to be monetized." Vesper felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to decide who you want to be, the woman who values her marriage more than her image, or the woman who needs strangers' approval more than her husband's respect. That's not fair, isn't it? Because for 3 weeks you've chosen your image every single time. When I asked you to consider how your choices affected our family, you chose to defend your image. When our daughter asked uncomfortable questions, you chose to protect your image. When I tried to have private conversations about our marriage, you turned them into public content for your image." Each word was accurate and devastating. Vesper could see the pattern now, the way she'd prioritized perception over reality, performance over genuine connection. "I choose you," she said desperately. "I choose our marriage." "Do you?" "Because choosing our marriage means accepting that it's not content. It's not a platform. It's not a way to prove how progressive and evolved you are. It's just a commitment between two people who love each other enough to protect what they've built." Jonas stood up again, leaving the envelope on the table. "I'm going to stay at my brother's tonight. Tomorrow I want you to decide what you really want. Not what looks good online, not what makes you feel special, not what proves a point to strangers. What you actually want." "I want you. I want our family." "Then prove it. Not to your followers, not to Riley, not to the internet. Prove it to me." He walked toward the door, then turned back. "And Vesper, if you decide you want to save this marriage, it means Riley is out of our lives completely. No contact, no friendship, no exceptions. He encouraged you to betray our marriage for his entertainment, and I won't have that poison in our lives anymore." After he left, Vesper sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers she was too afraid to open. Her phone buzzed with notifications, more comments on old posts, new followers, messages from people who wanted to interview her about modern relationships. For the first time in weeks, she turned the phone off without reading them. The silence that followed felt like the first honest moment she'd had since this whole nightmare began. Jonas didn't come home the next day, or the day after that. By Wednesday, Vesper realized he was serious about making her prove her commitment through actions rather than words. The house felt like a mausoleum of their former life together. Family photos that now looked like evidence of happier times. Mara's toys scattered in corners. Jonas's coffee mug still sitting in the sink from Sunday morning. She'd called in sick to work, unable to face the whispered conversations and sideways glances from colleagues who'd seen her viral moment turn into a public spectacle. Instead, she spent her days going through their life together, seeing it clearly for the first time in months. The photo albums told a story she'd forgotten. Jonas surprising her with a weekend trip for their anniversary. The two of them painting Mara's nursery, covered in yellow paint and laughing. Family vacations, where Jonas patiently carried all the bags so she could chase Mara on the beach. Quiet Sunday mornings, reading the paper together while their daughter colored on the floor between them. When had she decided this wasn't enough? When had she started needing strangers' validation more than her husband's quiet, steady love? Her phone had been buzzing constantly with interview requests and collaboration offers. A lifestyle brand wanted to sponsor her authentic relationship journey. A publisher was interested in a book about modern marriage. Riley had called 6 times, wanting to strategize their next move. She'd ignored them all. On Thursday morning, she finally opened the divorce papers Jonas had left. The legal language was cold and precise, but she could see his accountant's careful attention to detail in every clause. Fair division of assets, joint custody of Mara, reasonable alimony. Even in his anger and hurt, he was being scrupulously fair. That somehow made it worse. He wasn't trying to punish her or take revenge. He was simply, methodically, ending their marriage with the same careful precision he brought to everything else. The realization that she was about to lose the best man she'd ever known hit her like a physical blow. That afternoon, she drove to Riley's loft. He answered the door with his usual charming smile, but it looked different now. Calculated. Performative. "Vesper, I was wondering when you'd call me back. I have some amazing ideas for how we can capitalize on all this attention." "Capitalize," she repeated. "Yeah, I mean, you're basically famous now. We should think about how to monetize that. Maybe a YouTube channel about modern relationships. I could be your co-host." Looking at him now, Vesper could see what Jonas had seen from the beginning. Riley wasn't her friend. He was a man who enjoyed the chaos he created, who fed on the drama and attention that came from encouraging married women to cross boundaries. "How many other wives have you convinced to have sleepovers, Riley?" His smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, is this your thing? Finding married women and convincing them to prove their marriages are strong enough to handle inappropriate friendships?" "Jesus, Vesper, you sound like your husband now, paranoid and possessive." "Do I? Or do I sound like someone who's finally seeing clearly?" Riley's mask slipped. "If you're having regrets, that's on you. You wanted the attention as much as I did." "You're right," Vesper said. "But you knew I was married, had a daughter, and you still encouraged me to blow it all up for your amusement." She stood. "Don't ever contact me again." "You'll be back," he sneered. She didn't answer. She was already gone. Driving home, she found Jonas on the front steps, looking worn and waiting. "I ended it with Riley," she said, sitting beside him. "Permanently. I deleted every social media account. Not deactivated, deleted. The blog, the book deal. None of it matters if I lose you." Jonas searched her face. "How do I know this is real?" "Because I finally saw what I almost threw away. Your quiet, steady love is worth more than any amount of strangers' approval." Silence stretched between them. Then Jonas took her hand. "I've been miserable without you, but I can't go through this again." "You won't have to, I promise." He nodded slowly. "Let's go get Mara and bring her home." As they walked to the car together, Vesper felt a deep, unfamiliar peace. Not the rush of likes and comments, just the quiet certainty of choosing the man who had always chosen her. It would take time to rebuild trust. But for the first time, she was ready to do the work. Their life wouldn't be content anymore. It would just be theirs. And that was finally enough.